What if I told you the WNBA's most dominant referee scandal wasn't just about bad calls, but about a coordinated effort to protect their golden child while systematically destroying the league's next generation of superstars? Sources close to the officiating crew have leaked information that will make you question everything you thought you knew about professional basketball. The Las Vegas Aces vs. Indiana Fever playoff series wasn't decided on the court. It was orchestrated in emergency meetings behind closed doors. And what league insiders are now revealing about the financial pressures that influenced every whistle will expose the biggest conspiracy in women's basketball history. Before we expose the leaked documents that prove this entire series was rigged from the opening tip, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell, because what you're about to hear has the league office in full panic mode. They've been scrambling to suppress this information for months, but the truth always finds a way out. And if you think you know what happened in that series, you're about to discover you only saw the surface level of this corruption. Let's start with the numbers that league officials desperately tried to bury in their post-season reports. Across 5 games in that semifinal series, A'ja Wilson marched to the free throw line 26 times, while Aliyah Boston, who was battling in the paint every single possession, only got there 17 times. But here's what leaked audio from the officials' locker room reveals. Nearly half of Boston's free throws came in garbage time when the Aces were intentionally fouling to stop the clock. Strip those away and you're looking at a disparity so obvious that even casual fans started creating compilation videos that went viral across social media. The league tried to scrub those videos from the internet, issuing copyright strikes left and right, but that only made the conspiracy more obvious. Sources within the Referee Association have revealed that before Game 1 even started, there was an emergency conference call between league officials and the officiating crew. The topic? How to manage the pace of the series to ensure maximum television ratings and protect the league's investment in their established Chola stars. Documents leaked to insiders show that the WNBA had already projected a 37% increase in playoff revenue if the Aces advanced to the finals, compared to a Fever victory. Sponsors had made it clear behind closed doors that they wanted the established champion, not the upstart team with young talent that hadn't proven their commercial viability yet. This wasn't about basketball. This was about protecting a $200 million investment. Game 1 and 2 were when the orchestration became impossible to ignore. Aliyah Boston, the Fever's star center and one of the most dominant post players in the league, didn't shoot a single free throw in either game. Not one. 0. Meanwhile, Wilson was getting phantom calls on minimal contact, barely being touched, and somehow drawing fouls like she was made of glass. Boston was absorbing contact on every drive, getting hammered in the paint by multiple defenders, and the referees acted like they were officiating a completely different game. 2 straight playoff games without a single free throw for a dominant post player who lives in the paint. That's not coincidence. That's coordination. But that wasn't the whole story. What happened behind closed doors after Game 2 would shock even the most cynical basketball fans. Christy Sides, the Fever's head coach, requested an emergency meeting with league officials to address the blatant officiating bias. Sources who were present at that meeting reveal that Sides came prepared with video evidence of 37 separate instances where Wilson set illegal moving screens that went uncalled. She had timestamps, referee positioning data, and comparison footage showing Boston getting called for identical contact. The league's response? They told her to stop making waves or face disciplinary action that could result in suspension and fines exceeding $100,000. They literally threatened her into silence to protect their narrative. Sides tried to stay professional in public, but you could hear the frustration bleeding through her carefully chosen words in press conferences. She talked about how it's impossible to find any rhythm when there's a foul called every 10 seconds. She mentioned how her team couldn't get up and down the floor when the other team was constantly at the free throw line, killing any momentum the Fever tried to build. And then she dropped the statement that sent shockwaves through the basketball community. She said Aliyah Boston is the worst officiated post player in the entire league. The worst. A coach doesn't make that kind of public declaration unless something is seriously, fundamentally broken. League officials immediately went into damage control mode, but the cat was already out of the bag. What happened next would shock everyone who thought they understood how professional sports actually operate. Anonymous sources within the officiating crew began leaking information to basketball insiders about the pressure they were under from league headquarters. One referee, speaking on condition of anonymity, revealed that they received direct instructions to let Wilson play physically while calling Boston tight. The justification? Wilson's aggressive style is what makes her marketable. Boston's fundamental by-the-book approach doesn't create highlight reels that go viral on social media. The league needed viral moments to drive engagement, and they were willing to sacrifice competitive integrity to manufacture them. The moving screens that Wilson was setting became so egregious that multiple basketball analysts reviewing the tape independently arrived at the same count. 37 instances where she clearly violated the rules and didn't get called once. 37 times she shuffled her feet, stuck out her hips, threw shoulders into defenders to free up her teammates for open shots, and every single time the officials looked the other way like they were following a script. Meanwhile, Boston would set textbook screens with her feet planted like concrete and somehow get whistled for moving violations. The double standard wasn't just obvious, it was orchestrated. Sources close to the organization reveal that the physical abuse Lexi Hull took while trying to guard Wilson crossed the line from competitive basketball into borderline assault. Elbows to the ribs that left bruises, shoves off the ball that sent her sprawling, hip checks that knocked her completely out of plays. And ESPN, who had financial incentives to promote the Aces' success due to their broadcasting agreements, had the audacity to package these moments as highlight reels instead of calling them what they were: uncalled fouls that directly influenced game outcomes. There was one play where Wilson literally jumped, both feet leaving the ground on a screen, and landed again before Hull could get around her. That's not just illegal, that's basketball 101 fundamentals that get called in middle school games. But not when you're the league's protected asset. Behind closed doors, the conspiracy went even deeper. The foul totals exposed just how rigged this series actually was. Boston ended up with 19 fouls across the series, while Wilson only had 14. Think about the absurdity of that for a second. Boston was the one actually playing defense, guarding Wilson directly on almost every possession, staying vertical, contesting shots without fouling. Wilson was often switched onto smaller guards to conserve her energy, rarely having to battle Boston one-on-one in the post, where fouls naturally accumulate. Yet somehow Boston accumulated 5 more fouls than the player she was defending. The math doesn't just fail to add up, it exposes the entire operation. What really blew the lid off this conspiracy was what happened in the clutch moments of Game 5. This is where the referees stopped even pretending to be impartial and just blatantly influenced the outcome in real time. In the third quarter, with the Fever only down 4 points and building serious momentum that had the crowd on their feet, Boston set a perfect screen at the top of the key. Feet planted, arms straight down, completely legal by every definition in the rulebook. The whistle blows, offensive foul on Boston. The replay showed absolutely nothing wrong with the screen, but the damage was already done. From that moment forward, Boston had to play scared, worried that any contact whatsoever would send her to the bench with foul trouble. That fear changed her entire approach and killed the Fever's defensive intensity. Then in the fourth quarter, with the game still within reach and the Fever fighting for their playoff lives, Wilson sets the most obvious moving screen you've ever witnessed. She practically tackles Hull, creates a wide-open three-pointer for her teammate, and suddenly the referees are completely blind. Not only did they refuse to call the obvious foul, they actually called a defensive foul on the Fever on the same play. The crowd went absolutely ballistic. Even the announcers, who typically avoid criticizing officials, couldn't hide their confusion and frustration. It was so blatant that former NBA players watching the game started tweeting about the fix being in. You had to wonder if the refs were literally following a script written in the league office. But here's where the financial conspiracy gets even more disturbing. Leaked emails from league sponsors show that major brands had threatened to reduce their investments if the Aces didn't advance to the finals. One athletic apparel company had apparently negotiated clauses in their sponsorship agreements that tied payment amounts to specific teams making deep playoff runs. The Aces advancing meant an additional $12 million in guaranteed sponsor revenue for the league. The Fever advancing, with their young, unproven roster, meant potentially losing those financial guarantees. Sources reveal that league executives held emergency meetings 48 hours before Game 1 specifically to discuss how to protect their financial interests without making the manipulation too obvious. The overtime period was when things spiraled completely out of control. 2-point game, 2 minutes left, and Wilson sets another moving screen right in front of the lead referee. No call. Her teammate drains a 3-pointer off that illegal play, and suddenly the Aces have breathing room they didn't earn through legitimate basketball. The Fever players were looking at each other in complete disbelief. How do you compete when the rules only apply to one team? Sources close to the Fever locker room revealed that several players were in tears after the game, not because they lost, but because they felt robbed of a fair opportunity to compete. That's when you know something is fundamentally corrupt. What the league doesn't want you to know is that this pattern of preferential treatment isn't new, and it's not limited to this one series. Throughout the 2025 season, insiders have documented systematic bias in how certain players get officiated compared to others. The league has their chosen stars, the ones who fit their marketing narrative and generate the most social media engagement, and they receive protection that other players can only dream about. Meanwhile, emerging talents who threaten to disrupt the established hierarchy get officiated completely differently. It's not about skill or performance. It's about protecting investments and controlling narratives. When Sophie Cunningham joined the Fever this year, bringing championship experience and veteran leadership, she immediately noticed the difference in how games were called compared to her previous teams. Sources close to Cunningham reveal that she's been documenting the inconsistencies all season, keeping detailed notes about specific plays and referee tendencies. She's been careful not to directly call out the league office publicly, knowing the financial penalties and potential blacklisting that could result, but she's been vocal enough on social media that fans have picked up on the pattern. Her posts have been cryptic but pointed, and league officials have reportedly warned her multiple times about her social media activity. The real victim in this orchestrated conspiracy was Aliyah Boston, and what happened to her should terrify anyone who cares about competitive integrity in professional sports. Here's a player who absolutely dominated college basketball, winning a national championship and every major award available. She came into the WNBA with massive expectations and has delivered on every level. She's skilled, professional, plays the game the right way, represents her team with class. But when you watch her in these playoffs getting called for ticky-tack fouls while her opponent throws elbows and sets moving screens with complete immunity, you realize that talent and character don't matter if the league has already decided who they want to win. What makes this even more frustrating is that Boston never complains to officials. She just keeps playing through the contact, keeps her composure, never shows up the referees even when they're clearly screwing her over. Compare that to Wilson, who gets every call imaginable and still argues with refs when something doesn't go her way. It's like watching two different sports being played simultaneously. One where the rules matter, and one where they're just suggestions that can be ignored when convenient. Leaked audio from courtside microphones captured Wilson arguing with officials about calls that went in her favor, demanding even more preferential treatment. The audacity is stunning. The aftermath of this series has been absolutely explosive across social media and basketball communities. Fans have been breaking down every possession, creating detailed compilation videos of all the missed calls, flooding every platform with evidence of the systematic bias. The videos have accumulated millions of views, with former players and coaches commenting about how obvious the fix was. The WNBA has remained completely silent, refusing to address the controversy in any meaningful way, which only makes them look more guilty. When your own fans are calling the integrity of your playoffs into question with video evidence, and you won't even acknowledge their concerns, that's not just a public relations problem, that's a legitimacy crisis. Behind closed doors, sources reveal that league officials have been in full panic mode about the backlash. They've held multiple emergency meetings to discuss damage control strategies, but they're trapped in a corner of their own making. If they acknowledge the officiating problems, they admit the series was compromised and open themselves up to massive credibility issues and potential legal challenges. If they continue to ignore it, they risk alienating a growing portion of their fan base that's demanding accountability. Either way, they've created a situation where they can't win, and it's entirely self-inflicted. Christy Sides didn't hold back in her post-game comments, even knowing the potential consequences. She straight up said there's a double standard in how different players get their calls. She mentioned that if the game is going to be physical, then let both teams be physical. If you're going to call holds and grabs in contact, then call them both ways consistently. The frustration in her voice was impossible to miss. This wasn't just about one game or one series. This was about a pattern of favoritism that's been building all season, and she was done staying silent about it. Sources reveal that league officials considered suspending her for those comments, but ultimately decided that would only make the conspiracy more obvious. The free throw disparity tells the entire story when you break down the context. When one player gets 26 attempts and another gets 17, with nearly half of those 17 coming from intentional fouls in garbage time, that's not a difference in playing styles or aggression. That's selective enforcement of rules based on who the league wants to succeed. When a dominant post player who lives in the paint goes 2 full playoff games without a single free throw while her opponent is getting calls on minimal contact, it's not random variation. That's protection. And when you combine that with the moving screen data and the foul total disparities, the pattern becomes undeniable. Let's talk about those 37 uncalled moving screens one more time, because that number is so absurd it deserves emphasis. That's not just a few missed calls that happen in the flow of the game. That's systematic ignorance of rule violations. When you're setting illegal screens almost 8 times per game across a 5-game series and not getting called once, you're not playing basketball anymore. You're playing a different game with different rules that only apply to you. And when those illegal screens directly lead to made baskets in crucial moments, you're not just bending the rules. You're breaking the competitive integrity that makes sports meaningful. Sources within the analytics community have calculated that those uncalled screens directly led to 43 points across the series. 43 points that shouldn't have existed if the rules were enforced equally. What happened behind closed doors after the series ended reveals just how deep this conspiracy goes. Leaked information from team sources indicates that the Fever organization considered filing a formal protest with the league office, challenging the series outcome based on officiating bias. They had compiled extensive video evidence, statistical analysis, and even expert testimony from former officials who reviewed the games and found the disparities inexcusable. But league officials made it clear through back channels that any formal protest would result in severe financial penalties, potential draft pick forfeitures, and other punishments that would cripple the franchise. They were essentially blackmailed into accepting the rigged outcome or face organizational destruction. The WNBA has a legitimacy crisis on its hands that threatens the entire foundation of the league. Fans aren't stupid. They can see when officiating is tilted in one direction. They can recognize when certain players are being protected while others are being punished for playing the exact same way. And when it happens in the playoffs, in elimination games, with everything on the line, it destroys the credibility of the entire sport. Sources close to several team owners reveal that there have been private discussions about demanding referee reform and accountability measures. But those conversations have gone nowhere because the league office controls the narrative and the purse strings. What makes this conspiracy even worse is that it overshadowed what should have been an incredible showcase for women's basketball. 2 talented teams, future Hall of Famers going head-to-head, dramatic moments, clutch shots, everything that makes playoff basketball compelling. Instead, all anyone remembers is the terrible officiating and how the Fever got absolutely robbed of a fair opportunity to compete. That's not good for the sport. It's not good for the players who work their entire lives to reach this level. And it's definitely not good for growing the fan base when new viewers tune in and immediately see obvious corruption. The question now is what happens next, and leaked information suggests the league is terrified of the answer. Will they address this controversy or continue to ignore it and hope it goes away? Will officials be held accountable for such blatant bias, or will they be protected by the same system that orchestrated this mess? Will there be any meaningful changes to ensure fair officiating in future playoffs, or will we see the same patterns repeat with different teams and players? Based on the WNBA's track record and the financial incentives that drive their decision-making, sources say don't hold your breath for real reform. Behind closed doors, league officials are reportedly more concerned about protecting their revenue streams than addressing competitive integrity. Sponsor relationships are worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and those sponsors have made it clear they want star-driven narratives, not unpredictable outcomes that might hurt their marketing campaigns. The conspiracy isn't just about one series or one season. It's about a fundamental choice the league has made to prioritize short-term financial gains over long-term credibility. And that choice is going to haunt them as more fans wake up to what's really happening. If you've made it this far, drop a comment below about whether you think the WNBA will ever address this corruption, or if they're too deep in the conspiracy to turn back now. And make sure you're subscribed with notifications on, because we're going to keep exposing the truth that the league doesn't want you to know. The establishment wants to suppress this information, but the truth always finds a way out. The question is whether enough people will pay attention before it's too late to save the integrity of women's basketball. The conspiracy is real, the evidence is overwhelming, and the cover-up is still happening right now as you watch this. The only question left is, what are you going to do about it?